Hi, this is Sherry Gallagher with Technicon Company Incorporated. This video is on ISO 13485 2016, Medical Device Quality Management Systems, and we're doing Section 6, Resources. Management has two key responsibilities when providing resources. Provide the resources needed to implement the quality management system and maintain it effectively, and provide the resources to meet applicable regulatory and customer requirements. And of course, management must provide evidence that they have met these responsibilities. Resources fall into one of three subsections: human resources, infrastructure, or work environment and contamination control. The equivalent section in ISO 9001-2015 is Section 7, Support. In ISO 9001, monitoring and measuring equipment are considered resources in the support section. In ISO 13485-2016, monitoring and measuring resources are addressed in Section 7, Product Realization. So, now back to ISO 13485. Let's start with human resources. They must be competent on the basis of education, training, skills, experience. Now, it doesn't need to be any single one of these. It can be any combination of these. This does not apply apply just to the people who are making the product, by the way, but it also applies to engineers and managers as well. One of the most common findings is an internal auditor who has not been trained on the current revision of the standard, and when that finding will be against the human resources competency. The majority of companies utilize job descriptions to communicate the competency requirements for each position. Now let's break this down a little. How does your company demonstrate competency? If it's on the basis of education, a CV or resume or application are all forms of documentation. Depending on the skill set, your company may decide to verify the information provided by the employee, either through contact with a source of education, which is the school or university, or they can do it through testing. Training can be provided by your company or by an outside resource. Or the employee may bring certificates of training courses taken prior to ever being hired by your company. Any one of these, any combination of these, is acceptable. Remember, you're trying to accomplish competency, so you can do it in multiple ways. Skills may be tested at hiring or after training to provide evidence of competency. So if you have someone who is populating a PC board, you may test them when you go to hire them to make sure they have the dexterity you need, or you may give them extensive training and then test their competency. Experience also comes from the CV or resume or application, and in this case, your company may wish to contact a previous employer to verify the information. Now, the standard does not tell you what is necessary to demonstrate competency. Your company must document the processes for establishing competency. In other words, defining the job descriptions is the most common way of doing this. Determining and providing needed training. So how do you know whether someone is competent, and if they're not competent, how do you make sure that they are competent before they go to work? And finally, ensuring employees are aware of the risks associated with their actions. They need to know their impact on the product quality. Once competency is determined, the company may provide training or other actions to achieve or maintain competency and evaluate the effectiveness of training or actions. Now note, there is a requirement to maintain competency. So this isn't a one-and-done event, but an ongoing activity to make sure that people maintain their level of competency. It may be sending them out to annual seminars. It may be doing internal refresher training. It is an ongoing event. Now, most people don't like tests, and some people have serious anxiety as soon as you say test. To give you an example, there was one handler in our canine search and rescue group, and we were testing him and his dog on obedience. It's a requirement before you can go operational and actually do searches. The dog performed flawlessly under all sorts of difficult conditions when we were training, but when we got to the test, the handler was so nervous they failed. We then told the handler to take a practice run. With the pressure off, their performance was once again flawless. You may run into similar problems. Be creative. As long as you can provide evidence of competency, the requirements of the standard have been met. There is one other important requirement for human resources. Management must ensure personnel are aware of the relevance and importance of their activities and how they contribute to achieving the quality objectives. For example, if a quality objective is 100% on-time delivery, the employee needs to know the orders due that day must be completed by a certain time, say 2 p.m., in order to ship on time and meet the company objective of 100% on-time delivery. So make sure that when you are giving guidelines to your employees, they understand how they relate to the quality objectives. And then, of course, you have to maintain appropriate records. All right, let's go on to infrastructure. The requirements of the infrastructure are facilities, equipment, and support services needed to achieve conformity to product requirements, the way to prevent product mix-up, and ensure orderly handling of product. So, for example, does this product need to be kept at an ambient temperature above freezing and below boiling? Then the HVAC system, the heating, ventilating, air conditioning system, is part of the infrastructure. Is there an automated test during the production process? That test equipment is infrastructure. Is there a filling or welding operation or process? The manufacturing equipment in that segment is part of the infrastructure. Is there a barcode system used throughout the process to keep products segregated and organized? That is part of the infrastructure. Now, once the infrastructure is identified, your job doesn't stop there. You have to identify the maintenance activities and the interval at which they must be performed. And then you better have evidence proving that you actually did those activities. So yes, expect your auditor to look at your preventive maintenance records. The third element of resources is the work environment. Now, it's easy to get confused as to what is infrastructure and what is work environment. Here's an example that may help. The HVAC system and that equipment is infrastructure. The temperature in the room is the work environment. Now, your company has to define the work environment and document the requirements for the work environment have been met. If you have a manufacturing area that needs to be kept at positive pressure, you will need records demonstrating that pressure was held 24/7, 365. In addition, the company needs to define requirements for health, cleanliness, and clothing of personnel in product contact areas where the device safety or performance could be affected. So do you have a sick leave policy? If someone is showing signs of a cold, are there actions that need to be taken? Are there cleaning procedures? Are they being followed? Are there gowning requirements? Are they being followed? Documentation that these requirements have been met is needed. Now, there's another piece to this as well. If you are moving personnel temporarily from one area to another, then actions must be taken to ensure that they're either competently trained to work in the new environment or adequately supervised to prevent an impact on the product. It is acceptable to move people around, but the company must ensure that they do not negatively impact the device, and they must have records to demonstrate how they ensured that there was no impact. Now, the last piece of the work environment is contamination control. This is going to vary from product to product. So if you are doing service on imaging equipment that is used in the ambient environment, that's going to be very different from a pacemaker which is implanted. If the product is eventually sterilized, there should be controls in place to prevent contamination or potential contamination by microorganisms or particulate matter. And of course, the evidence of those controls need to be implemented and effective. Now note, not only do you prevent the contamination, you have to prevent the potential of contamination. So it could be through your gowning procedures, it could be through positive pressure. There are very many ways of doing that. But you have to not only prevent it, you have to prevent the potential. And then you have to show evidence that you did accomplish that. Well, so there you have it. That is Section 6 of Resource Management for ISO 13485. If you have questions, feel free to contact us at technicon1986@spcglobal.net or call 708-814-3685 or look up our website www.technicon.com. Please go out and have a great day.